Welcome to Tech Talk with Craig Peterson, show number 715. Oh no, this is how it starts. How's it going to end? I've been watching a funny movie here, The Guilt Trip. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but boy, does it look familiar. Anyhow, today we are talking about summer stuff. We're going to have a whole lot of fun. We've got LifeProof joining us today, Psionic Mobile, Ion Audio, Family iBoard. We're going to talk about 3M and their window films. We've got a little bit here about iOS 6, what's coming in 6 as we move forward. Of course, iOS 7 should be out fairly soon. We're going to talk about the movement online, about injuries and illnesses from inactivity. Edmund is going to join us. Of course, those are the guys and gals that talk about cars. Hertz is going to be with us. Thumbs Up, we're going to talk about rating TV in real time, the real social media here for TVs. And the British Swim School is going to be with us today, so it should be a lot of fun. We're going to have a few shows here over the next few weeks. Actually, we're skipping next week. We've got a bunch of stuff we want to finish covering that we didn't quite finish before. We've got some more cloud computing. We'll talk about Kickstarter and how you can start a business very inexpensively coming up next week. And also a little bit more about some SEO. Some things you can do to get PR and track it online. So that'll be coming up next week as well. We're also, of course, as we do every week, going to start out our show by talking about some articles in the news this week. We'll be covering a little bit about infographics, some hardcore SEO tips, a little bit about Google and their new blimps over Africa and Asia. Android's market share isn't what it seems. And also about Western IQs. Now, people ask me, why do I come up with the subjects I come up with, the articles that we want to talk about here? And it's all from you. If you go to craigradio.com, you can follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. In fact, if you're on YouTube watching me right now, hello, welcome. You can see what I look like, and we have a few things that I don't take out. I edit them out in the broadcast, but they're in the YouTube video. You can find all of those at craigradio.com. Just click on the link to your favorite social media site. Now, here's what happens. I use some tracking software that us evil marketers use, and that tracking software allows me to see what you guys are clicking on. So you guys and gals click on articles, I know about it, if you retweet them, if you share them, and I use that information to figure out what are the top articles for the week. Now, what I do is every day I post somewhere between 3 and 4 different articles that I think are of interest to you. Things about business, running your own business, maybe doing a little consulting on the side to make a few bucks. I also, of course, talk about things for the home, things you can do to enjoy life a little bit better. So all of that stuff is available to you by following me on Twitter. So if you're a Twitter person, you can go ahead and follow me. If you are on Facebook, you can also like me. Now, Facebook, just because you liked me doesn't mean you'll get all my posts. And I don't get it. I've got hundreds of people following me on, or who have liked me on Facebook. And yet, most of the time, only 30 to 50 people get to see the articles I post, which is kind of strange. Well, there is a reason for that, and there's also a reason why many celebrities have left Facebook behind in the dust, because Zuckerberg wants us to pay to have you, who have liked us, follow us. Now, does that make a whole lot of sense to you? If you want to follow someone on Facebook and you like them, why shouldn't you get their postings? Instead of having Facebook decide whether or not the things that I post might be of interest to you. Now, you could argue that maybe that would be good, but how does Facebook really know if you want to follow something, a specific article, if you want to read it? They don't. That's the bottom line. So I advise people to use Twitter in order to see more of that. And also let me know, by the way, if you think I should have an email list, I'm kind of thinking I should now, especially with Facebook messing up the way they have been, then my email list, let me know. We can put it together and I can send out these articles via email too, if that's of interest to you. Send me a note, just Craig at craigpeterson.com, Craig, C-R-A-I-G, at CraigPeterson.com. Let me know if you think we should do an email. I don't know, if I'm going to completely jump off the Zuckerberg wagon at Facebook, but I know quite a few people who have. And in fact, there's quite a few people who've also decided that they're not going to do the Google AdWords stuff anymore. And they're doing that like Cringely. He's been writing for years, but, it's just not paying the bills anymore. So, we'll see what happens. You're listening to Tech Talk with Craig Peterson. A little bit of an intro here into today's show. And we're about to get into articles in the news this week. So if you want to find out more, if you want to follow it, if you want to get engaged in the conversation, which is exactly how we determine which articles we're going to air, then go to craigradio.com and click on your favorite social media site, because that's what we talked about. So here we go. I'm pulling this into my screen. If you are watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see my desktop as I record the show. Everything that's on my desktop, including the articles and, of course, the audio as it is being recorded. You can see what software I'm using and everything else. This first one is by Eric Pfeiffer, and this was posted in Yahoo News, and this is about Western IQs. Now, if you go to my website at craigpeterson.com, you'll see links to a bunch of different articles about the same study. But this study that came from Europe, researchers over there, claims that the average IQ, that's intelligence quotient for those of you in real Linda, that the average IQ in Western nations dropped by 14.1 points over the last century. Now, that's huge. Now, the question is, how can they tell? How do they know? Well, what they did is they used some visual cortex techniques. So let me go to quote from the study here. We tested the hypothesis that Victorians were cleverer than modern populations using high-quality instruments, namely measures of simple visual reaction time in a meta-analytic study. It gets kind of detailed here, but it could really surprise people out there when we think that we're smarter than our ancestors were. And this is interesting because they're saying that the Victorian era, which was, the early 1800s, 1837 until 1901, was a very, very progressive time when it came to technology. Some people have credited the Reform Act of 1832 that started a whole bunch of growth in the world, frankly, but was started in the UK. But now they're looking at it saying, well, maybe this has to do with IQ and the drop in IQ. Maybe that has to do with the way people vote nowadays. I don't know. We've certainly seen a lot of crazy things happening. So why has there been such a steady drop here and we're talking about 1.2% a decade? As the UPI notes, previous research studies have found that women of higher intelligence tend to have fewer children on average, meaning that population growth may be driven by those with a lower IQ. And over time, the abundance of less intelligent offspring would affect the overall IQ average. Now, this is interesting because it ties into one of my favorite movies out there. If you haven't seen it, you might want to look it up. And it's about how this, in fact, could lead to a real stupid society. Now I'm trying to remember the name of the movie. It'll come to me here. I'll let you know. Idiocracy. There you go. Idiocracy. You got to watch about the first 10 minutes of that movie. The rest of the movie is kind of silly/stupid, but the first 10 minutes kind of explains this whole thing. These findings strongly indicate that with respect to general intelligence, the Victorians were substantially cleverer than modern Western populations. Isn't that kind of cool? All right, this next article has to do with Android's market share. And the article was very, very popular. I think a lot of people are interested in finding out about the Android versus Apple war. Frankly, the rest of the guys are out of the game. You're not going to see anything coming of BlackBerry, of Windows smartphone, of Nokia's new stuff. It's really down to two, at least at this point. I don't see anybody else coming in and taking over. So they're looking at the numbers and saying, well, wait a minute here. Things just don't add up. And he has a little story here, the joke that starts out. Two farmers bought a truckload of watermelons, paying $5 a piece for them. Okay, this is a simple math problem. They then drove to the market and sold all their watermelons for $4 each. Remember, they bought them for $5. After counting up their money at the end of the day, they realized that they ended up with less money than they'd started with. "See," said one farmer to the other, "I told you we should have got a bigger truck." And that's what's happening here. Android is winning if all you're measuring is the size of the truck. If all you're measuring is the number of devices out there, they're winning. But when it comes to business, iPhone, iPad, absolute winners, just beat the Android stuff incredibly. And when it comes to profitability for the companies, Apple hands down wins. So Android's not as great as people may think. And again, craigpeterson.com, you'll see this article as well as others, and visit online at craigradio.com. You're listening to Tech Talk with Craig Peterson, going through some articles in the news this week. Then we'll be getting into summer tech right here, so don't go anywhere. This next one has to do with Google. Now, they've been busy wiring cities. They wired Kansas City, Kansas, so that there's high-speed internet available for every home in certain regions of Kansas City, most of the major regions, and it's available for cheap. For some $70 a month, you can get 100 megabits or more worth of bandwidth from Google. Well, now they're intending to build a huge wireless network across Africa and Asia, and they're going to use these high-altitude blimps. If you're watching me on YouTube, you can see a picture of this blimp here on my screen. It's really, really quite cool, this Google blimp. But the blimp idea is in conjunction with some satellite ideas that they have and other things. But they're looking to bring internet to around 1 billion people. Isn't that amazing? And they're going to build and help operate these networks from sub-Saharan Africa through Southeast Asia. Google's putting together low-cost smartphones running Android on low-power microprocessors to tie this whole thing together. It's very, very cool. They're going to be using balloons and blimps that can transmit to areas that are hundreds of square kilometers in size. Good for them. This is fantastic. You know, there have been some studies that show that micro-investing in Africa, giving these women, because the studies have shown that the women have been better than the men in putting together some of these businesses, and there could be a few reasons for this, but the women tend to make small things and are able to sell them for low prices. And the studies have found that these women having cell phones makes all the difference for them, because they can communicate. They communicate with their suppliers, they can communicate with their workers, they can get it all put together. Some very, very interesting studies. There was some stuff on TED Talk about this. Well, if we now can give them internet on the smartphones, just think of what they could do. So that's a fantastic thing. Frankly, I think they should do this in the US, but there's regulatory issues here. They wouldn't be able to do it. Yay. What could possibly go wrong, right? I'm from the government and I'm here to help. This next one, very popular again, and there's a lot of people who have businesses, want to start businesses, etc. So they're interested in things like search engine optimization, and you're going to really enjoy my interview next week as I talk with a PR tools guy here about what's happening online. But SEO has been growing like crazy. There was a conference that was held out in London last week called SMX London, all about search marketing. And these are the notes that a young lady had put together here, Gianluca Fiorelli, about some of the things that were said by the speakers, and this had to do with what their favorite tools are, the best tools that they found online. And Trello is one that I came across in this list. You might want to check it out. It's free, and it's all about organizing. That's very, very important too. But you'll really enjoy this. All these tools, how to tie them in, special modules that are available for Google Chrome, all of that is here in this article. And I posted a lot of it, too, on craigpeterson.com. Last article this week before we go into the interviews. This is about infographics. I don't know if you've seen these before. They are very, very cool. They're driving leads in the real world. Some people have said infographics are dead. But bottom line, they're very, very effective. People for centuries, since the beginning of scratching on walls in caves, have been drawing with pictures to explain data, to explain information. Well, it's still very effective today. So you'll find this article too very, very interesting. It's kind of fun. That's, by the way, what an infographic looks like. If you're not sure what they are, this particular one is about plastic surgery, but it's not going anywhere at all. Certainly no time fast infographics. All right, so we are going to go away for a couple of minutes. We're going to come back. We've got Ion Audio with us. We're going to talk about mobile payments here as you're out and about this summer. LifeProof is going to join us. Family iBoard. We'll talk about 3M and their window films, how they can help save your furniture, your floor, etc. Injuries from illness, inactivity. Edmunds is going to join us talking about some tips for the road if you're going to be driving a little bit. Hertz also, with their Hertz Never Lost, and how that can help out. Thumbs Up, rating TV in real time, and a little bit about the British Swim School. All of that and more right here. And of course, visit me online, craigradio.com. Craig Radio, CRAIGRADIO.com. And right there, you can go ahead and follow me on any of your favorite social media sites. Stick around. We'll be right back. And welcome to everybody on, of course, YouTube.